Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Interim Full Council this evening. It's good to have Councillor Willett and Councillor O'Donoghue with us on Zoom. Can we agree to suspend standing orders when they want to speak?
Agreed.
Thank you. Apologies for absence.
So we have apologies from Councillor White, who has a work appointment, and Councillor Ahmed, who is caring. If you want to agree to accept those.
Are we agreed to receive and accept those? Apologies. Thank you. Any declarations of interest at this point?
No.
Thank you. And now we move on to item 3, which is a motion from Councillor Stuchbury. Shall I read it out, or would you like to read it out? In light of the fact that the Buckingham River ooze was polluted with raw sewage in 2017, Buckingham Town Council, as a riparian owner of large stretches of the river through the town of Buckingham, disagrees with allowing sewage to be dumped into the river course, and therefore registers its concern and objections to the government's decision not to adopt the stronger measures proposed in the Environment Bill to restrict the discharge of raw sewage into our watercourses, allowing water companies to continue the dumping of sewage within our river. The river is used by members of our community for leisure and recreation throughout the year. The Council therefore agrees to write to the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, registering our concern and asking them to seek to support legislation that restricts the discharge of raw sewage into our rivers at the earliest appropriate opportunity. That's proposed by Councillor Stuchbury. Councillor Cole.
May I second the motion?
Seconded by Councillor Cole. Councillor Stuchbury. You don't need to.
No, I think briefly. You all will be aware that we had 2 major pollution incidents in Buckingham, one in 2017, one in 2018. You will also be aware that our rivers is fragile and is recovering, and that any sort of diminishing of those protections would also spoil the good work which has been undertaken by many agencies, community groups and organisations. Buckingham Town Council has been nothing more than diligent in its actions. Its town council staff have met with the Environment Agency, worked to restock the river with them, and we've also, as an organisation, took good care of our own sections of the river and continue to do so. So I'm rather hoping that this is too difficult to agree. The legislation for this is still as it was on the day it was drafted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stuchbury. Councillor Cole, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think what's important here, you'll all be aware of the recent goings on in Parliament about this, that the government 2 weeks ago voted against this clause about enforcing companies to clean up. They do appear to be going through something of a U-turn, maybe a U-bend, to sort this out, but there is nothing in writing about that yet. All we know is they've made statements of intent, but nothing has yet been made before Parliament, and indeed they can't until the Duke of Westminster brings his own motion in the House of Lords. Then it would move to the Commons. But just to add to that, I'm indebted to Councillor Stuchbury for just reminding me that Milton Keynes Magistrates Court in May this year, Anglia Water was prosecuted by the Environment Agency. The case, I believe, has been relisted for the Crown Court in December. They've been charged with polluting the River Great Ooze. It's a Category 1 event. It's a pumping station failure. For 23 hours, raw sewage was being pumped into the river. But the Environment Agency has prosecuted, and that is underway at the moment. So I support Councillor Stuchbury fully that we should draw the attention of the government as an affected town by this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Thank you. Mayor, I would agree with both Councillor Stuchbury and Councillor Cole on this. Whilst the government has given some words of possibly going back on the vote against it, as Councillor Cole says, there's nothing actually happened yet. would suggest that the promises are about as watertight as the water system that we currently have, full of leaks and not up to standard really, and I wouldn't trust them to actually go ahead with it. I believe that the wording of the supposed U-turn are along the lines of to get the water companies to fix stuff as and when they can, rather than putting any sort of time frame or anything on them.
Thank you. Not a very smart objective. Councillor Schaefer, then Councillor Troy.
Okay, I agree with what has been said so far, and I would also like to support this motion. I think that the uproar that has followed this vote in Parliament has caused a partial or an indicated change of direction, keeping up the pressure from lots of different stakeholders is likely to result in a better outcome. And from that perspective, I think we should do this.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Troy.
May I suggest we also copy the letter to our MP and sheriffs and anybody else that has a vested interest? So,
Good. Can we vote for the motion now? Are we ready to move to a vote? Thank you.
Sorry, can we just deal with Councillor Troy's proposal, which I seconded, and just make that part?
Yes.
On the, if the proposer is seconded, we can second that.
Totally agree.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
just thank the council members for their positive comments on this. I believe we are as one in looking after our environment, and we have to send a strong message to ensure that change takes place. And we could labour hard about the individuals involved in it, but in the end, it's our river which is the individual element which has been insulted against in the past, and we don't want insult against it again. I am minded of the fact that during lockdown, you would have seen so many children took the opportunity to paddle in the river, and so many people took the opportunity along our rivers through Buckingham. It was a great relief from the tiresome lockdown when we were allowed to go out again. And this can only be a positive thing, and we'll see how it progresses.
Can we record it as well?
Yeah.
Councillor Hetherington.
I fully support everything that's been said so far, and I'd also like to note that I'm particularly concerned about these things happening when we see ever increasing pressure of development causing pressure onto our sewage systems.
Thank you. Can we move to a vote? And those in favour of the motion, please show. Those no.
Oh, no. So in favour, councillors Gately, Mordew, Stuchbury, Mahi, Harvey, Ralph, Davis, Hetherington. I've got a surname block, I'm so sorry. Schaefer, sorry. Cole and Fry.
Those against? Abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Moving on to item 4. Remembrance Sunday Screen. This is from TCE, so Council.
Well, firstly, thank you to the officers for the work that they did on this, working in cooperation with the British Legion and the oath for the debt. All those present at the Townsend Events Committee listened to the report, and we thought it and saw fit to recommend to the council to meet the shortfall. This year is going to be quite a different year, where we all get back together and recognise contributions other people have made on behalf of our country. I don't think it's too big a contribution for us to contribute to a screen to allow people to spread out and be a little bit more socially distanced and a little bit more comfortable when they attend. And over that tenure, you've read the motion, or I know you would have done, that you would have supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David.
I believe here that the cost of the hire of the large screen is now £1,687. Since we, the Town Centre and Events Committee, agreed that we should spend up to £2,000 on it. How would the council feel of paying for the whole thing rather than asking the charity of the British Legion contributing £1,000 from their contributed funds?
It's a good question. I don't know. Councillor Schaefer, maybe the town.
Can I ask a
clerk.
question of clarification on this one? The 1,600, is this what would fall to the council, or is this the total hire cost?
Yeah, so Chair, the total cost is now 1,600.
Okay.
So the options would be either we would ask the British Legion to continue with their £1,000 contribution and we'd pay 600, or presumably we'd go 50-50, or we'd offer to pay the whole thing. I guess they would be the choices.
So,
Just at the time that we agreed it, the information was fluid,
I understand.
and we needed to make a decision. I have no problem with the proposal, myself, and other people wish to speak, so I'll.
Councillor Markey, we've got a lot of hands raised at the moment. Councillor.
Yes, I'm with the proposal that we bear the whole cost of the screen and not penalise the British Legion. We already committed to spending £2,000. It's under that, so let's go with it and spend that money ourselves.
Did anybody want to say how can Councillor Mudge?
Doesn't matter. It does concern me that there's a lot of money to spend for about an hour when the church at that time would presumably be empty, because the services were always held in the church before being moved outside when they started refurbishing the church. Surely there'd be ample opportunity for those of which could go into the church where they already have the facilities without having to spend ratepayers' money on this. That's raised a question.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury and Councillor Harvey.
I think I totally understand what Councillor Morgie said, but we are where we are. The report before us tonight is to agree the report before us tonight. We haven't got the time or the privilege to go into a long discussion. We either agree to, as being seconded, which I would support that proposal to fund the full cost, and was said at the meeting that this is an early stage, and discussions were questions were asked by our cooperative member from the university about how we go forward. We're not at that stage of going forward. We have 2 weeks to prepare, and our officers have done an excellent job in facilitating the stream. The British Legion, to ensure it happened, offered £1,000, and I think tonight we can get somewhere forward and meet the obligations to our community. What happens in a preceding year is what happens in a preceding year, and I think all what's been said about that can take place in the 12 months following the event, with our officers and members of this council working together with the British Legion and the church on what happens. But I think tonight we just agreed the recommendation.
Thank you.
Which amended.
Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Mark.
Have we fully seconded this motion yet, by the way?
It's
it's on the agenda, doesn't need to be.
No.
Huh?
It's a recommendation from TCE.
Right. I'm not going to vote against this nor abstain. I'll vote for it. Like Councillor Audio, I'm a little bit wary of spending this amount of money in such a short space of time without there being sufficient, in my view, debate and discussion about this. I feel a bit bounced with this decision, given that it's all happening this coming weekend, of course. I would recommend 3 things that we actually build into this. Either we make it part of the motion, or we just agree it anyway. Is I think we should pay it in full. I agree with that, and take the onus off the British Legion. But as we do that, then we should ensure that there is a signed Buckingham Town Council event hung off the screen, so that's there, so it's clear that we paid for that screen. Would be my proposal. Secondly, I think we should evaluate it, because what my concern is that people go to the memorial service not to see stuff, because there isn't really much to see, frankly, but they go there to bear witness and to be present. And I'm not persuaded, I'm not convinced that people will actually gravitate away from where the main event is happening onto the green to watch it on the TV screen. I'm not saying that will happen, so therefore I'm proposing that we evaluate this carefully and shrewdly to see just how many people actually do watch it on the screen. Because I think if people want to bear witness, then they're not going to go away by 50 metres. But then the third aspect, I think, for me comes into play here is that if we are doing it with the intent purpose in part to allow people to socially distance, then I think there will need to be marshals to try and encourage people to go off the green and watch it, in a sense, partly remotely. Because I think people will need some nudging to go there because it's a new approach. And therefore, I think people will need to have a little bit of guidance to do that. I don't know who's going to provide the marshals, but maybe there needs to be some thought about that, whether it's British Legion people or town council people of some kind. I don't know. That's my concern. I will vote for this, though, and I'm proposing that we do, as Councillor Trice suggested, that we pay for it in full. But I think it is careful evaluation.
Councillor Fran David.
Thank you. I think, can the town clerk
I
comment
just want to
on
clarify
that?
some matters if it's
Can
okay.
we go to the
Can I
town clerk?
just clarify one point? I think Councillor Stuchbury will clarify the other point. In terms of a notice by the screen, obviously it's not our event, it's a British Legion event, so we can't say that, but we have got a new logo from this year, which is supported by the town council, so it's hands under the town council logo. So I'm sure we could put that up somewhere next to the screen, so it's not claiming it's our event, but it is making clear that the screen is funded by us.
Thank you.
So, just,
So can I have Councillor Ralph next? He's been waiting for a while.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at point 2.6, which is about the video images not being streamed and wouldn't be recorded. And I wondered why that might be. And then when I realised that perhaps the British Legion were involved in financing it, it could be a copyright issue or something like that. But I would have thought in the circumstances, if it is being videoed, it's a perfect thing to be streamed, simply because a number of people will not be able to go, particularly elderly people, I would say, and often people who may have served their country in the past, and consequently they're the very people who would, although they would like to bear witness, cannot physically do so, and consequently would get some succour from that on such an event. And to be honest, I was very surprised to see that point on there.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
Just to clarify that point, one of the things which the committee discussed in length is the protections that we have to do with events under child protection. And one of the things in the child protection that we're not sure of, and is the children would take part in the event, whether they are party to a protection order.
Right.
And if we film them and put it out onto public site, then that protection order effectively could be compromised. So the joys of everybody else could be the sorrow of an individual child who's receiving education and stuff, and that's why we discussed that at length. The other element was, it was discussed because 2019 was so well attended that the children were being, let's say, less pushed together in such a way that when they took part in the event, they were getting less out of it than they could have done, and it wasn't very pleasant. So the officers talked with the British Legion in depth about how to mitigate that and how to improve that. The site is a congested site, and the event has become so popular. We anticipate the officers with their meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there have been a lot of people this year, and we need to. Everyone has to respect everyone else, and the people who are taking part in the service, the civic party, the Lord Lieutenant, and the recipients from the different groups need to be able to conduct that service. And this was, it's not ideal, it's not perfect, but the thoughts were that this is a good way of going forward. I think everybody's points are well made, and I think that we had longer to discuss this, because the meetings were cancelled in various reasons because of inability to meet beforehand. We won't go into that, but the meeting took place when it did. The officers brought a really good report back to the committee. The committee recognised the work of the officers went through. Having worked and been involved in children's services, as a councillor in the past, we have to be really careful when it comes to the protection of minors. And I think I absolutely, in a perfect world, yes, we would publish it. But one child's life being disrupted with a full-time education in Buckingham and a successful and happy life isn't worth the cost of forecasting it.
Thank you. Councillor Willett.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I had a vote, I would be voting for this tonight. Like Councillor Ralph, I was just a bit confused also with regards to the recording of the event. Could we not publish or, publish on social media that we are recording the event and that those who choose to attend do so at their own volition?
Thank you for that suggestion, but I think what Councillor Stuchbury has already said just clarifies how difficult that would be. In relation to Councillor Mordew's point about going into the church, I guess at the moment there are a number of people who are more sensitive going into an indoor space than there would be being in an outdoor space. But it could be something that could be considered in the future, I guess, when we're beyond the pandemic. Councillor Schaefer.
I will be supporting this motion or this proposal, but I would like to perhaps reinforce Councillor Harvey's point that we should evaluate how this is going, because the problem may arise again. The pandemic is clearly not over. And so just that we know from next year how this is going to work.
So can we vote on this subject to, I think it's agreed that it should be properly evaluated.
Just for information, every event of the town council is evaluated. Every event is the committee officers present a report and it's evaluated by the council. This sounds like an important issue. I look forward to all of you attending the next town centre events committee and taking part in the evaluation.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a couple of points. In terms of valuation, the one thing I don't think we do, just with the nature of the event, is give people a format at the event, but we'll certainly go as far as we can in terms of contacting all the organisations afterwards and seeking views afterwards to get feedback. And the other thing is, I don't think we're going to answer Councillor Harvey's point about stewarding the event. So obviously it's all been done in quite a short space of time. The conversation we've had is to ask the Army cadets to specifically steward people around and guide people around as they come in. So hopefully there'll be one set of cadets or another to do that, but we're making efforts to do that.
Thank you. So subject to all those provisos, those in favour of this proposal?
Sorry, can I just clarify, is this in favour of the council fully funding?
Yeah, the council fully,
The motion amended.
The amended motion that the council fully fund the large screen at the cost of £1,687. Those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Those against? One
against.
Are those abstaining?
2 abstentions.
That motion is, that proposal is carried, that recommendation from the TC is carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 5, we've received extra information today. Councillor Stuchbury.
Item 5 is going to go back to very, very valuable against the information we received today, all 3 things before the meeting. I think it's only right that we go back and discuss that at events, and we'll bring it back as a recommendation. It's not time, it's not that emergency, but if we're going to do these things, do it correct.
Thank you. Item 6, Lacehill Medical Centre consultation. We've had a report from the small group. Is there somebody who wants to present that? Councillor Hetherington.
Yes, we next. And the bottom line is that we believe it's completely inappropriate for Buckingham Town Council to put in a response, because the Swan practice are particularly wanting to consult with patients, and there's no way that we can be described as a patient. There are obviously quite a lot of questions that we have got, but the proper place, we believe, to get these answers is from the forum, which had been running very well until the pandemic struck. And Councillor Try is a member of this forum, and we would very much like to encourage Swan Practice to convene a meeting of the forum as soon as possible. So perhaps our best response is to send a letter to the Swan Practice saying that we would very much like to understand more about what's going on and can they give us some news about what's going on with the forum.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mordew.
I think it's very important that everyone comments on the survey that the Swan Practice is conducting, because the CCG has to know that in Buckingham we do want an up-to-date modern medical practice, not only for the patients, but also for the staff that are working in atrocious conditions there. The current delay is not so much of the making of the Swan Practice directly, but it's more of a planning issue in the withdrawal of the reserve matters, and that has to be considered by officers, and hopefully it'll be done before the planning permission runs out, which is, I think, towards the end of December.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury, then Councillor Harvey.
I don't think we can say how important an outcome of this is for Buckingham. It's been 2018 or before 2018, and it's been going on for years before that discussion, which the Mordew premised in several meetings. We have to note that Brackley have got a centre and there's one in Albury. So we just need something in Buckingham, but the things that they have to do within the consultation that they haven't actually done, have had a response to say they have, is the health impact assessment, which I asked for in 2018, hasn't been completed. It's an impact of usage to make sure that they assess every patient's use of it. There's things they have to do before doing it. And health and scrutiny have looked at this. If there was questions to ask at a later stage, the chairman gave us, Councillor Mordew and myself, to work together on the committee, reassurance that it would come back. But we have got to hope that they meet their obligations in regards to the planning, which is, I think, Councillor Mordew said in the previous meetings, correctly if I'm wrong, the Mordew was 24th, would be December the 24th. And that's quite a tight frame. We are now entering November, and that will, and look how quick this year's gone. And so there's lots of things which could possibly go wrong. We wish them every success. If anyone hasn't filled the survey show consultation in, do so. But there's nothing wrong. If you have concerns or positive comments to make or anything, you can write to the Health and Scrutiny Committee, and they have a public session at the front of every meeting at the Health and Scrutiny Committee, where you can come and speak as a member of the public or as a town councillor, expressing your questions. So it's a good thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Stuchbury. Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Hetherington, and then I think we need to move on.
Okay, the one thing I know about healthcare and social care is you can't change one bit without it having knock-on effects to all the other bits. What we're dealing with here in our sort of parish of Buckingham is a very carefully balanced health and social care system, and therefore to look at just what the Swan Practice is doing is actually might be just missing the point. So what I'm just going to propose is that by all means we should write to the Swan Practice, of course, but I think we should also purposefully copy in the CCG, the Health Trust, Buckinghamshire Council, particularly Public Health, the Health and Social Care Committee, and the Scrutiny Committee as well, and put out a public press release on this too, so that people know that we're concerned about the whole system, not just one bit of it. And I think also that our point of view should also express the concern that we are running out of road with getting a new health centre. Who knows exactly why? It's probably a sequence of things And a bit like the solar panels on the roofs and so on, it just takes a long time for some extraordinary reasons. But we have to make the point, as the report does say, is that the section 106 planning gain of having that land for a health centre is fast approaching, and somebody somewhere needs to get the proverbial out, basically.
Thank you. That's what Hetherington.
Yes, I should have stressed that yes, we completely endorse and agree with everyone should be putting their own personal response to it. We did also, we were very mindful of avoiding any kind of confrontation. So we suggested gently that the Swan practice might like to invite us to a meeting to explain what roadblocks were, but the Swan practice did decline that and instead said that we should all go along to the open sessions. The second of which, second and last, is actually tomorrow, if anyone's minded to go to that.
Thank you. I did go to the consultation last week. I would urge people to go along so your voice is heard, but also to complete the survey. But we need to now receive this report and agree whether we will send a letter as suggested, with copies as suggested, to the various relevant authorities.
The Commission has asked question, Councillor Everington. She makes a good point that we could have a confidential meeting with them to discuss what the roadblock is. We don't have to have a public meeting with it, but we are rather uninformed and unprepared for what that roadblock is, and I feel that members would respect that confidentiality. I don't think there's overburden there on this. I really think she makes a good point. The fact that they're resistant to that is strange, really, because all best decisions are done best in proper consultation in the open, and all members around here are responsible councillors and would act responsibly. So I think that we should just ask them whether they would see to a private meeting, if not a private meeting, an officer meeting to inform us what that is, the holdup, and then the town clerk could decide whether that needs to be discussed in confidential thereafter, just to try and move that little uncertainty forward, because we do need to be informed. We are elected members of the town council representing the community. That's a very big responsibility. We need to be part of that discussion, and we have been discussing how, through one form or another on this council for a very long time.
Thank you, Councillor Stuchbury. Councillor Davies.
Sorry.
So I think we move to a vote. I think.
I declare an interest as a trustee of the League of Friends.
Okay.
Doesn't quite relate, but I'm declaring.
I just raise a point.
Yeah.
No, you're talking about Swan practice as if they are the ones that are making the decision. And it's not them, it's the CCG that actually holds the purse strings. And they're the ones that allocate the money and say whether it's going to happen or not. The Swan practice wants it to happen as much as anyone else does. And I think that you can write to Swan practice, but it's the members of the public out there, who hopefully some might be watching. We need to put pressure on the CCG to keep the money in the pot to fund that new medical practice, because there is a time limit on it. And if we just have a go at the Swan practice, I don't think it's necessarily achieve what you want it to achieve. What we want is a medical centre built, and until the CCG and its subsequently the Bobs actually agree and carry on with it, which I'm sure they will, because there has been a lot of pressure put on them by the Swan practice. You've only got to look at the photos of the conditions they're in. So I would suggest that you actually write to the CCG as well as the Swan practice.
I've no problem with that, Councillor Wood. I think everyone around here is supportive of the Swan practice. I think the CCG is a very good route forward, but we need to support the Swan practice in doing their job, and we need, by doing that, being better informed of these things as a council, not as individuals, is the way to do that.
Can we just vote on whether we should send a letter as suggested with those copies. Those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Those against? Abstentions?
2
abstentions. Thank you. That is carried. I think we can leave it up to the town clerk to compose that letter appropriately, but yeah. The point taken, the strong practice is working under very difficult circumstances.
That's why I haven't got that, I've got another meeting to go to.
Thank you. Chair's announcements. I don't think I've got any.
Bonfire fireworks on Saturday.
Sorry?
Bonfire fireworks on Saturday.
Oh yeah, do come along to the bonfire and fireworks if you can on Saturday evenings. This fireworks start at 7. Date of next meetings: full council 22nd of November, interim 20th of December. And that concludes this meeting. Now reconvene.